The 2020 Heisman ceremony is less than a week away, and a new player is going to be taking home the prestigious hardware. As of right now, it looks like it truly can be anyone's award. If you've been watching my videos over the last few weeks, you know that my first place vote will go to Devontae Smith, wide receiver from Alabama. He'd be the first wide receiver in 30 years to take home the award. As part of Heisman week, I thought it'd be fun if I ranked the last 10 Heisman Trophy winners who I thought just overall had the best season. Before we get to today's video, make sure you subscribe and turn on those notifications so you never miss another video. If you love college football, this is definitely the place for you. Before he was winning an MVP in the NFL, Lamar Jackson was busy winning the Heisman Trophy at Louisville, and he comes in at number 10 on this list. Though many people believe Deshaun Watson should have taken home the award, Jackson won in the voting. He received 2,144 points, with Deshaun Watson receiving 1,524 points. Jackson finished the season with 3,500 passing yards, the 16th most in the nation. He was also 16th in the country in passing touchdowns, throwing 30 of them. However, Lamar's real damage came on the ground as he rushed for just under 1,600 yards with 21 rushing touchdowns. He led all quarterbacks in both categories and was top 5 in rushing touchdowns and top 10 in rushing yards among all players in the country. His season got off to an insane start as he threw 6 touchdown passes in the season opener against Charlotte. He also threw 300 yards while rushing for over 100 yards with 2 rushing touchdowns. On September 17th, and only the third game of the season, Lamar made himself the Heisman frontrunner. The Cardinals took down the number 2 ranked Florida State Seminoles, defeating them by 43 points. Jackson threw for 216 yards and a touchdown, but had 150 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns on the day. Louisville jumped up to number 3 in the rankings and were in the running for not only the ACC title, but potentially a college football championship. After moving up to number 3 in the country with a 9-1 record, the Cardinals lost by 23 to an unranked Houston team. Lamar Jackson was quiet as he accounted for only 1 touchdown. Then the following week, Louisville lost to an unranked Kentucky team. Lamar had over 450 yards of total offense and 4 touchdowns, but he threw 3 costly interceptions. Though these 2 weeks put his Heisman campaign in jeopardy, he was still able to pull out the victory. Coming in at number 9 is the legend himself, Johnny Manziel. As a freshman, Johnny Football took the award home in 2012. He received 2,029 total points, finishing more than 300 points ahead of Manziel, who came in second. Manziel electrified the country as he was without a doubt the most exciting player in college football and one of the most exciting players we've ever seen. He threw for 3,700 yards, the 15th most in the country. He did only throw 26 touchdowns and had 9 interceptions to go along with that. However, his damage came on the ground as he rushed for more than 1,400 yards with 21 rushing touchdowns. He was top 20 in the country in rushing yards and had the second most by any quarterback. He was 7th in the country in rushing touchdowns and had the second most among quarterbacks as well. Manziel started the season out slow as he was quiet in Texas A&M's season opening loss to Florida. After that, the magic began. The following week against SMU, he threw for 300 yards with 4 passing touchdowns while rushing for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 5 total touchdowns the following week and 4 total touchdowns the week after that. After starting the season with a loss, the Aggies won 4 in a row and climbed into the top 25. Then they traveled to face number 23 Louisiana Tech on the road. Manziel went absolutely berserk, throwing for 400 yards with 3 touchdowns or rushing for 180 yards and 3 touchdowns. Texas A&M lost by 5 points the following week to number 6 LSU. Manziel was awful as he threw 3 interceptions and didn't have a single touchdown. Then he finished the season with a bang, including pulling off one of the most iconic upsets of the past decade. Manziel shocked the world and knocked off the number 1 team in the nation. He threw for 250 yards with 2 touchdowns and rushed for just under 100 yards. That was the day he had his Heisman moment. Texas A&M won the following 2 weeks as Manziel racked up over 600 passing yards with 6 passing touchdowns and 4 rushing touchdowns. Manziel was awarded the Heisman Trophy in December. Though this game didn't count towards his Heisman campaign, he finished the season with a win over number 12 Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. He threw for over 300 yards with 2 touchdowns while rushing for an insane 230 yards with 2 touchdowns. Although he wasn't liked by many and came with a lot of controversy, there's no denying that Johnny Manziel is one of the most exciting players we've ever seen in college football. Number 8 on the list goes to Jameis Winston, who won the Heisman back in 2013. He led the Seminoles to a perfect season and a national championship in the final year of the BCS. He ran away with the Heisman, finishing with 2,205 total points. The next closest was Alabama quarterback A.J. McCarron, who finished with 704 points. Jameis threw for over 4,000 yards, the 9th most in the FBS. His 40 passing touchdowns were the 2nd most in the country. He kicked off the season in dominating fashion, totaling 5 touchdowns in his first career game. Florida State won their first 4 games of the season, setting up a matchup against number 25 Maryland, their first ranked opponent of the season. Winston put his name on the map as he threw for 400 yards with 5 passing touchdowns. The following week, he went on the road to face the number 3 Clemson Tigers. Florida State beat them by more than 5 touchdowns as Jameis threw for 450 yards with 3 touchdowns, putting his name on the map and making him an early Heisman favorite. A few weeks later, Florida State took down number 7 Miami. Winston had an okay game as he threw a touchdown and had 2 interceptions. However, Florida State got the win. The Seminoles wouldn't have a game be within 30 points for the remainder of the season. Jameis had 11 touchdowns over his final 3 games as the Seminoles beat Duke by 40 points in the ACC title game. Though it didn't count towards his Heisman, Winston capped off the season by defeating Auburn to win the national championship. He threw for 237 yards, including the game-winning touchdown in the final seconds. Next at number 7, we have Alabama running back Derrick Henry, who won the Heisman in 2015. Now, this was a really good season by Henry, but I still can't believe the Heisman didn't go to Christian McCaffrey this season. Henry finished with 378 first-place votes and a total of 1,832 points, edging out Christian McCaffrey by less than 300 points. Playing in 15 games definitely helped his numbers, but Derrick Henry was first in the country with 2,219 rushing yards and first in the country with 28 rushing touchdowns. It also really helped him by playing on the best team in the nation as Alabama ended up winning the national championship. Henry had 9 games with at least 140 rushing yards, including 4 games with at least 200 yards. His season high came against Auburn when he finished with 271 yards on 46 freaking carries. Henry also had at least 2 touchdowns in 9 games and at least 3 touchdowns in 4 games. Again, this was an incredible season and one of the better ones we've seen from a running back in recent memory, but Christian McCaffrey set the damn record for most total yards in a season in college football history. Number 6 on this list will go to Baker Mayfield, who won the Heisman back in 2017 and became the first walk-on to ever win the Heisman. He absolutely ran away with the vote, receiving 732 first-place votes. The next closest in regards to first-place votes was Bryce Love, who had only 75. Baker led the country in completion percentage as he completed more than 70% of his passes. He threw for over 4,600 yards, the second most in the country, and he was also second in passing touchdowns as his 43 touchdowns were just 1 short of the lead. With all of these incredible numbers, he only threw 6 interceptions. For the hell of it, he added 300 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns as well. Because of Mayfield, Oklahoma was one of the best teams in college football all season. They were ranked inside the top 10 in all but 2 weeks. They won the Big 12 and reached the college football playoff. They lost an overtime thriller to Georgia, just missing out on a national championship appearance. Baker threw for at least 300 yards 8 times and threw at least 3 touchdowns 10 times. His best game of the season came on the road at Oklahoma State, in which he threw for 600 yards with 5 passing touchdowns. Even though he won the Heisman, his best moment of the season came on November 18th when he became the father of Kansas football by throwing 3 touchdowns and defeating the Jayhawks by 40 points. Before we get to the top 5, if you could please take a second and give this video a thumbs up, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps share the video with more college football fans, and it only takes 1 second to do. Coming in at number 5 is Robert Griffin III, who shocked the entire country by coming out of nowhere and leading Baylor to one of the greatest seasons in the history of the program. RG3 finished with 405 first-place votes and just under 1,700 points, taking down Andrew Luck. RG3 threw for 4,300 yards, the 6th most in the country. His 37 passing touchdowns were tied for the 4th most in the country. His completion percentage was the 3rd best among quarterbacks who threw at least 400 passes that year, and at the time, he had the greatest passer efficiency in Heisman history. He was also top 10 in the country among quarterbacks in both rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, as he rushed for 700 yards and had 10 rushing touchdowns. At the end of October, Baylor was sitting at 4-3 on the season. It was at this point that Robert Griffin III turned the Bears around and had them playing like one of the best teams in the entire country. They won 5 straight games, including a thrilling victory at home to take down number 5 Oklahoma. That was the game in which RG3 won the Heisman Trophy. He threw for just under 500 yards with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. He also added 70 yards on the ground as well. In the Big 12 title game, he threw for 300 yards with 2 touchdowns, while also rushing for 2 touchdowns as well. Number 4 on our list goes to Oklahoma quarterback Kyler Murray, who took home the Heisman while rocking this classic Great Gatsby suit back in 2018. He finished with 517 first-place votes, more than 200 than the runner-up Tua Tagovailoa. This race was a little close, as Murray's total amount of points was about 300 more than Tua's. The fact that Tua didn't win the Heisman with this kind of season he had just shows how good Kyler was in 2018. In his first season as a starting quarterback, Murray was electric for the Sooners. He completed 69% of his passes and threw for just under 4,400 yards, which was the third most in the country. In addition, he was also third in the nation with 42 passing touchdowns as well. Kyler was able to keep Oklahoma ranked in the top 10 all season and led the best offense in the entire country in 2018. They took down number 9 Texas in the Big 12 championship, advancing to yet another college football playoff. Unfortunately, this year had the same result as the season prior, and Oklahoma lost in the semifinal. Still, he was the best quarterback in college football and was the second Oklahoma quarterback to win the Heisman in 2 years. Number 3 on our Heisman list goes to Oregon quarterback Marcus Mariota, who completely ran away with the vote in 2014. He came in first place, finishing with 788 first place votes. The next closest in regards to first place votes was Amari Cooper, who received only 49 first place votes. Marcus Mariota was an absolute human cheat code back in 2014, as he was nearly flawless for the Oregon Ducks. His 4,450 passing yards were the third most in the country. He was completing 68% of his passes, and his 10 yards per attempt was the best in the country. His 42 passing touchdowns were the second most in the nation. He was also first in the country in passing efficiency, posting a rating of 186. On the ground, Mariota was one of the best as well. He led all quarterbacks with 15 rushing touchdowns and rushed for just under 800 yards while averaging about 6 yards per carry. At the time of the voting for the Heisman, Mariota's 53 total touchdowns tied Sam Bradford for the most in Heisman history. His winning Heisman vote was the third highest vote total in Heisman history, as he appeared on a record 95.16% of ballots. Coming in at number 2 is one of the biggest blowouts we've seen in recent years. Auburn quarterback Cam Newton won the Heisman in 2010, his lone season as a starting quarterback in college football. He received 729 first-place votes, with the next closest being Andrew Luck, who took in 78 first-place votes. Cam's passing numbers weren't extraordinary by any means. He threw for 2,800 yards, which was the 36th most in the country in 2010. His 30 touchdowns, though, ranked him much higher, as it was the 13th most in the country. What was so spectacular about Newton's season was the damage he did in the running game. He rushed for nearly 1,500 yards, which placed him just outside the top 10 in the country in total rushing yards, including running backs. His 20 rushing touchdowns were the third most in the country among all players and tied him for the most by a quarterback that season. What makes Cam's season one of the best we've ever seen is the fact that he took an Auburn team with no expectations and led them to the national championship. The Tigers began the season ranked number 22, but went undefeated on their journey towards winning it all. Newton took down 6 teams that were ranked in the top 20 on the year and was exceptional in every game. His most memorable performance came against number 6 LSU, when he ran for over 200 yards with 2 rushing touchdowns, while giving us one of the greatest runs we've ever seen from a quarterback. For the number 1 Heisman winning season of the past decade, this shouldn't even come as a surprise, but it goes to Joe Burrow of LSU, who won it in 2019. He received 841 first place votes, the second most of all time. Chase Young came in second, taking in 20 first place votes, and that is 20 too many. No offense to Chase Young, who was the best defensive player in college football last year, but how could you seriously give a first place vote to anyone other than Joe Burrow? I don't even really know where to begin with this season because it was just so insane. He completed over 76% of his passes, easily the best of any quarterback in the country. He threw for just under 5,700 yards, which is top 5 all time. His 60 passing touchdowns were the most all time, and a number we may not see broken for some time. His passer efficiency rating is also the greatest ever from a Heisman winner at 202. Now, I could spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about Joe Burrow's record-breaking season, but we all remember just how incredible it was. It's the greatest season from a quarterback in college football history, and I honestly don't think we're going to see another one like that anytime soon. So congratulations, Joe Burrow. Not only do you have the best Heisman winning season from the past decade, you likely have the greatest Heisman winning season of all time. Well, there's my top 10 list for the best Heisman winning seasons from the past decade. Do you guys agree with my list? It's a lot harder than you think trying to rank 10 incredible seasons, so let me know what your top 10 is, or your top 5, or even what your top 3 would look like. If you haven't done so yet, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a second and give this video a thumbs up, as it really helps the video and the channel grow. If you haven't done so yet, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications for more college football content. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow in my next Heisman video.